We had said to the group before that we would come right back from lunch and do the echo issue. So let's go ahead and do that. We have some people here to speak on it. This is item number 30. I'm going to call the people that have signed up to speak. Mr. Pena, you want to come down and speak? On deck is Rana Ghana. Is Rana Ghana here? No? What about Stephen Potter? You'll be up next to this dais, and you have time donated to you from Ronnie Chalbin. Is Ronnie here? He is what?
He's currently not.
He's not. Okay, then you just have the 3 minutes. Mr. Pena?
Good afternoon. Gus Pena again, President of Veterans for Progress. The issue that y'all discussed before you left for executive session, it was a lengthy executive session. We, Veterans for Progress, we support the veterans housing issue. What we don't want to see is just business as usual. Our focus is housing veterans that are that need housing, affordable housing. But also, we also support single women and children that are homeless to get housing also. That's very key and crucial. My verbiage when Mayor Bruce Todd was mayor back in 96, 97 was wraparound services, and I'm glad somebody else is using that statement, wraparound services, because if you just put them in a apartment, they're going to fall through the crack and they're not going to become self-sufficient. It's very important to become self-sufficient with all these services to support them and be able to rent a unit. But one of the things that I don't like, Mayor and council members, is this affordable housing. We need to have a clear-cut definition of what affordable is. What it could be affordable to you, a millionaire, is not affordable to me. And a lot of my veterans and single women with children, veterans, single female veterans that have children, it's not affordable. And I'm hoping that when y'all decide to do this an echo housing, really make it affordable for the people. You can't make it here in this Austin, Texas anymore. I am a native East Austin from East Fifth Street. I've seen it go to 1.5 million just the land where I used to live in, 2327 East Fifth Street. So anyway, our committee on housing the homeless veterans is this, and we will support y'all. And I think ECHO has done a good job. It's just that I don't see affordability like it should be. And that has been the comment among us. But you met my vice president. This gentleman was homeless. My vice president was homeless as a veteran, but he got housing, and really affordable housing. I've known homelessness myself. You remember when you were campaigning for mayor, my wife and I, when I was discharged from South Austin Medical Hospital, used to go and phone bank for you over there at your campaign headquarters. You didn't know that I had been homeless, and I was. So we know what it's all about. That's why I am very passionate about making sure we get affordability, but true blue affordability for the people, because their income, their little checks, pension checks, doesn't make it to $1,400 a month or $800 a month for bedrooms, for affordable housing. One of the things that we're working on is the HUD-VASH voucher, Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing Voucher, which is for veterans. They're not accepting them. And I'll wrap up. And it's state law, federal law, that you will accept the federal voucher. Anyway, Mayor, I know I'm tough on y'all, but darn it, we have a lot of people that need housing out there, and just keep up the good work, and I'm really supporting y'all very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mayor?
Yes.
It's my understanding there may be some individuals who have signed up on this item who have some time constraints that are coming up soon, and I don't know who those individuals are, but I wonder if the council's in agreement, we might just ask anybody with a pressing time constraint.
Okay, we can certainly do that.
To indicate to us.
So we're calling names. I called up Stephen Potter next. Are there people that have signed up for this item number 30 that have time constraints and they're going to need to leave? Okay, let's continue through the list. All right. Next up is going to be Brendan Griffin. No, after you. Come on up. Come on up. And while you're coming up, Brendan Griffin. Is Brendan Griffin here? You'll be at the next podium. All right, sir. 3 minutes.
Sir, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Stephen Potter. I am part of Austin's creative class. I'm a filmmaker, writer, artist. I am also homeless, and I have been homeless for a number of years. I have served the homeless community as an activist, and I applaud what the city has done in general. I applaud the direction that the city is taking, but I would like to speak to a particular issue that my theater group and a few of our associates have had with certain ordinances, specifically the no sit, no lie, the camping bans. Basically, our point of view is you recognize that Austin has an affordable housing crisis. You recognize that Austin has nowhere near enough shelter beds. So, with those two facts in mind, actively punishing someone for sleeping in public is socially wrong, morally wrong, a waste of time, money, and resources. Connecting that back to housing, someone who gets a ticket is less likely to get housing because they have a ticket. To put that in another way, because I didn't have a place to sleep, I got a ticket. And when I applied to get an apartment, I was denied that apartment because I got a ticket for having no place to sleep. When we ask that these ordinances be re-examined, brought back to the forefront, we ask that they be repealed. They do not do what they were meant to do. They are, again, currently a waste of time and resources that could be spent in better ways. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Griffin, before you start, is Mary Mergler here?
She could be. She could be.
Okay. What about Alex Coggin? Okay, you'll be up at the next podium. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Council, Mayor Pro Tem. We applaud and support. I'm speaking on behalf of Texas Appleseed, the Deputy Director there. We applaud and support the City Council's dedication to ending homelessness in the City of Austin. The plans going forward are very good. As part of the action plan being considered today, we really urge the City Council to also, once and for all, end the criminalization of homelessness in the City of Austin by repealing the ordinances that criminalize camping, sitting, and lying down and soliciting. You just heard very compelling testimony of like the kinds of problems that arise by criminalizing these issues. These ordinances, I'm here to speak a little bit about the scale. These ordinances lead to a huge number of warrants. There were more than 8,000 warrants for failure to appear issued by the Downtown Austin Community Court last year. Maybe not all of those are related specifically to these ordinances, but quite a few were. And there were more than 1,400 warrants issued for failure to pay fines or complete community service by the DACC last year. And warrants lead to hundreds of arrests each year. There were 1,400 arrests last year on DACC warrants. Criminal justice involvement hinders people's ability to escape homelessness and to escape poverty for exactly the reasons that Mr. Potter described. Accessing many services is denied if you have a warrant out for your arrest or if you have a criminal record of any kind, including these kinds of offenses. When people are attempting to get their feet back on the ground, to find affordable housing, to find employment, issuing arrest warrants and sending them to jail sets them back in a major way. It makes it more difficult to find housing, more difficult for employment. We urge you to remove this additional barrier for people who are struggling to escape homelessness and look forward to working with you on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. My name is Alex Cogan, and I'm a soon-to-be graduate from UT with my Master's of Science in Social Work. First of all, thank you for your leadership and dedication to addressing the issue of homelessness in Austin. This semester, I've been working with grassroots leadership to end the criminalization of homelessness in Austin. Just saying that is almost shocking. How and why is being homeless a crime? I know you're aware of the answer: the ordinances. Both the city auditor's report and Austin's action plan to end homelessness have stated the harmful effects of the no sit, no lie, no camping, no soliciting, panhandling ordinances, but they still exist. It's clear from the data that there are not nearly enough beds and shelters for these individuals to rest during the day or evening. Where then are they supposed to go? How then are they supposed to rest? I was part of a team that collaborated with those directly affected by homelessness to survey more than 80 homeless individuals in Austin this past month. Our findings showed once more just how harmful these ordinances are on our community members. For the no sit, no lie ordinance alone, we found that people reported being ticketed up to 50 times, and those people are still homeless. The argument you may hear from proponents of these ordinances is that they connect people to services. Yet more than 94% of the people we surveyed who interacted with police due to these ordinances were not connected to services or resources. Once again, 94%. That means nearly every person who was cited or arrested did not receive services or resources. So why then is the city continuing to cite and arrest these individuals for simply trying to rest? As we all know, a criminal record limits someone's ability to obtain employment and housing. Why are we making it even harder for them to escape the cycle of homelessness? Before I end my testimony, I'd like to share a message from a homeless man I interviewed at Sunrise Church. He said, "Instead of punishing the homeless, you should offer resources. A person should have a right to work instead of a criminal background." Today, I urge the city to develop a plan to repeal these ordinances, expand APD's homeless outreach street team, and invest in permanent supportive housing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Is Emily Garrick here? Come on down. And then as Ms. Garrick is coming down, is Alvin Anderson here? Sanderson? Okay. Is Robert Williams here? Okay. And is John Elford here?
John had to leave.
All right. Thank you. After she's done speaking, you'll have 6 minutes.
All right, thank you, sir.
3 minutes.
Thank you, council members and mayor. My name is Emily Garrick. I'm an attorney at the Texas Fair Defense Project. We work with low-income individuals, many of whom are homeless and have been ticketed under the ordinances that have been talked about today. Like the other speakers, I want to thank the council for addressing these issues in general. We also urge the council to repeal these ordinances, no sit, no lie, no camping, and no panhandling ordinances. In the presentation that was given this morning, it acknowledged that there's a huge problem that is causing all these problems, but there was no solution for it. There's nothing in the recommendations to actually repeal the ordinances, and we really want to urge you to do that. The ordinances are inhumane, as have been discussed. They create barriers to escaping homelessness and to getting jobs. People with warrants will get refused employment, they'll get refused housing, and they won't be able to get their licenses due to their tickets. Many people are also arrested, and even if you're only arrested overnight, that still will cause you to lose all your things if you're homeless because you don't have anywhere to store them. And if it's an old ticket, then you could, and you've already become housed, then you could lose your housing once you're jailed again. Importantly, these ordinances, it's really, really important because it actually does put people in a lot of danger, and in some situations it's life or death. You're about to hear from Mr. Sanderson, who is one of the people who was pushed in avoiding getting an ordinance citation, had to go into more dangerous areas to avoid police. The police are using the ordinances to go into the woods and hunt people down and give them tickets for violations of these ordinances. People are scared of the police. The homeless people are really vulnerable. They're afraid to contact the police. You have even more highly vulnerable populations within the homeless community, including immigrants and people of color. About 40% of homeless people are African American, even though Austin is only about 8% African American. And when you have ordinances like these, it makes it difficult for people to feel like they can trust the police, feel like they can reach out to them. And if you want to have the police doing outreach and actually providing people with services that's not going to work if people are scared of them. There's also data in the presentation showing that there are about 10,000 people a year who are homeless in Austin, and that's just who have been going through services and identified as homeless. So it's probably people who are not being represented in that number, and only 5,000 people being sheltered a year. So that's 5,000 people at least who don't have shelter.
You can finish your thought.
Until we actually provide sufficient shelter for everybody, people are going to be inhumanely targeted and criminalized by these ordinances.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Next speaker. Sir, you have, I think, six minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, for council members for allowing me to speak today. My name is Alvin Sanderson. I'm 62 years old. Approximately 6 months ago, I became homeless. I got sick. Around the latter part of February, I was awakened by 3 police officers. I was in the wooded section between Bolton Creek and the railroad. I wasn't bothering nobody. I was trying to sleep. I was given a ticket. Approximately a week later, I was given another ticket. They asked me why I didn't move on. I said, where am I going to go? Because of the consequences of getting the ticket and the no sit, no lie, no camping, no panhandling ordinance that I hope that you will change, I moved into the 3rd tunnel underneath the Barton Springs Bridge over the road. When I went to sleep, it was dry. I had a sleeping bag, all my belongings. About 1:30, a wall of water came through there. I stood up. Everything just washed away. I tried to get out of there. I thought I was going to die. It was so much water coming through there. I came to my waist in water. I didn't have no shoes on. If you go and look at that creek right now, it's full of rocks. I almost died. I was scared. I was terrified. All behind me hiding, trying to find a place to sleep. The ordinances are not needed. They're oppressive. They're barbaric. It's only behind something. People don't have nothing, and they need a place to sleep. The ordinances made me hide. The police officer told me, just hide. Where can you hide except for going in the woods, going underground? There's a large population underground. I was terrified. I got up, went to the daughtery, got in there. I was soaking wet. You could hear the roar of the water coming through there. It took me an hour to get out of that creek. I just ask that you repeal those ordinances. Look at that. They're forcing people to go underground. They're forcing people to hide so they don't get services. They're never going to go there because they're afraid. There's a lot of abuse out there. It's dangerous out there. Every day, when it rains, I hate it when it rains because I get wet. Everything about it, you lose everything you have. A blanket to keep you warm, you lose that. Day in and day out, it's a struggle. It takes me an hour and a half to find a place to sleep. I work at a food pantry. I serve the homeless. I serve the poor. And I get up, and a lot of times I'm so tired, I can't move. I have to sit down and rest. But I jeopardize getting another ticket. And I just ask that you repeal this ordinance that are meaningless. They don't help nothing. They these people don't have nothing, and they're made to, they're made to go to the courts. That doesn't help them. A lot of people don't want to go. They're afraid of it. I live that life. I'll go tonight and find me a place to live in the woods with the spiders and the rattlesnakes and all that other. I'm a productive member of society. I help the homeless, even though I'm homeless myself. So I asked that each of y'all really look at what this is doing. It's taking people. It's all about people. It's not about property. It's about people, taking care of them. The system of care, it's got to include that you don't give them a ticket. And I thank you for your time, sir.
Is Julian Reyes here? Julian Reyes?
Sir.
Come on down. While he's coming down, is Chris Harris here? Chris Harris? No? Come on down. What about Norma Herrera? Norma Herrera? You'll be at the next podium. Come on down, sir. Come to a podium. Oh, I see. Got it. You're up. You have 3 minutes.
All right. You ready? Now give me 30 seconds before you start it. The video? You got the video there, right? Okay, awesome. Hey guys, I'm Julian Reyes. I'm with the Challenger street newspaper, and I'm now with the street performers for the No Sit, No Lie Down troupe. I wanted to mention that, I've spoken to this group before many times, but I want you guys to reach out to the homeless more than you have and more than ECHO has. I don't think 80 people or whatever the count is. There are not enough voices of the constituents that are mostly affected and have the equity in this. They're actual stakeholders, not the check holders, but the actual stakeholders haven't been represented in this. I think it's a little bit, I'm actually against moving forward on this until we have more stakeholders, until we've looked at the ordinances that have criminalized and created the homelessness in the first place, which is the direct responsibility of the city. Illegal ordinances put a shame on the city, on all of you guys. Illegal ordinances, that's what we're talking about. Not just unethical and immoral ordinances, but illegal. The plan's not acceptable unless it's all-inclusive. And I would like to have myself and the Challenger newspaper be contacted by the mayor and the mayor's task force for ending systemic gentrification and racism, and the homelessness task force. And I'll show you what happens with the homeless. Go ahead and roll the video. This is how the police handle the homeless. And I think you guys are familiar with this. We hit play. This is a young lady in her pajamas outside the arch that was arrested and detained simply for having her belongings at her feet. It was called littering. It's just another ordinance. So even if we look at solicitation, anti-solicitation, no sit, no lie down, and criminal camping, there's criminal trespass, public intoxication. There's so many bag of tricks laws that would be used. It started off with a consensual conversation, and now more cops showed up. That's Corporal Seebeck, who's arrested me and assaulted several of the press on the right there. You can turn it just a little bit. It's a homeless shelter. So the officer tried to keep me from filming, which is against my constitutional rights, against federal law. You guys are familiar with bullying, right? Bullying campaign, anti-bullying campaigns. What does it look like the police are doing right now? All these stories of police involvement in oppression of the homeless. This is the good part. Let me finish my thought. So there's nothing, this is not necessary. These are compliance techniques. She's already in cuffs. They're going to take her to the ground while the sergeant looks on and the corporal stands by. When we request these videos from APD, the camera doesn't exist that's in that room that APD owns. The public information requests, again, were
Gotcha.
denied proof.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Let's do something.
Let's go. Thank you. Introduce yourself, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Chris Harris. I'm from District 1 and with Grassroots Leadership. Thank you all for allowing me to speak today. I'm here primarily just to question why City Council continues to refuse to address head-on the 3 ordinances, city ordinances that currently criminalize homelessness. Being homeless is not a crime, and yet, as the ECHO plan and the ECHO point in time counts repeatedly show us, we do not have the beds, the adequate number of beds to house everyone experiencing homelessness on a given night. Because of that, in particular, the no camping ordinance literally criminalizes each and every one of those individuals that is unable to find a bed each and every day. And while I respect that the city auditor and the ECHO report that you all be voting on today, action plan, understand and recognize that these ordinances are problematic and that they actually contribute to homelessness by giving folks criminal records and additional barriers to housing, to employment, to educational opportunities. The fact that there is no specific plan in place, despite this recognition of the problematic element of these ordinances, is unfortunate. And this body needs to act as quickly as possible. The homeless community cannot wait for new services, new programs, and other things to be developed, much less to be implemented such that maybe they will, blunt the traumatic impacts that these ordinances are having each and every day, as you heard Alvin talk about. And so, again, I ask you to take up as a body in a public forum, very specifically, these 3 ordinances and do all that you can to negate the negative impacts that criminalizing people is having in our community. And for me and for my organization, that begins with the repeal of these ordinances immediately. Again, homelessness is not a crime, but that's how we treat it today in this community. And the plans that are currently in front of us are not adequately addressing that. If you look on page 25 under section 3.2, the 3 ordinances are mentioned as a problematic element. Yet in the proposed action column that appears directly to the right of it, there's nothing that addresses these ordinances. Literally, it listed as a problematic element, and there's nothing to address them. And so I'm asking you to address them as quickly as possible, to bring forth a repeal ordinance for these 3 ordinances so that they're wiped off the books. And people that are experiencing homelessness night to night and day to day in this community are no longer harassed by the police because of these ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you. After Ms. Herrera speaks, then Daniel Corral will speak. Is Daniel Corral? You'll be up next. Go ahead.
My name is Norma Herrera, and I work at Grassroots Leadership. Thank you, Mayor Adler and members of the council, for your leadership and the opportunity to speak on the issue of homelessness and the City of Austin's response to it. So it's been stated by several people here today that the best we can do right now is better plan for future housing and future resources that address the needs of individuals who have no place to go right now. So before adequate housing and resources are made available, we can make sure right now that we aren't criminalizing individuals simply for being poor and not having a place to stay. We can repeal the city ordinances that make it a crime to be without a home. Please include the repeal of no sit, no lie, no camping, and no soliciting in the city's action plan to end homelessness. As Alex mentioned earlier, in partnership with the Gathering Ground Theater Group, we surveyed about 80 folks here in Austin experiencing homelessness. And when we looked through all of the comments and all of the feedback that they gave us, there were several themes that came up. And I wanted to point out one of them for you, and that is the theme of differential enforcement, specifically targeting people experiencing homelessness. So I'll read, rather than explain it to you myself, I'll read someone's words. You see people on 6th Street drinking, and those people aren't being told to move. It's wrong. We're being treated less than human. People don't understand that they could easily be in our situation. 60% of women who leave abuse end up homeless. And to finish out my time, I'll just read from a list of comments. We asked people if you could share something for the people who decide on these laws. What would you share? I just try and live my life. I'd like to be allowed freedom to live my life. I helped homeless people before I was homeless, and I treated people like people. Lay off a little. Where do you expect us to sleep at? The fact that we're trying to make money instead of robbing or stealing, that's a positive. Please leave broken homeless people who have nothing alone. We're just milling around in your world trying to stay alive. Take your foot off our neck. We have nothing already. You want to take nothing from us? What do they expect us to do? Everyone has to be somewhere because the shelters and the food are here, meaning downtown. I am being constantly harassed for simply looking for a place to sleep. What do you expect for us to do? Leave us alone. You are not helping with any kind of support. Grow a conscience. With these ordinances, you have made it extremely difficult to get proper sleep and try and better myself. What am I supposed to do? Try to have a little more compassion. Try to put yourself in someone else's shoes before you start hurting them. I just don't see why they would make it illegal to just be a human in public. It's unconstitutional. Let us be ourselves. We have nowhere to go. Just let us be. Thank you.
Okay. After Mr. Carl speaks, the next speaker is Seneca Savoy. Is Seneca Savoy here? Okay, yes. You'll be at the next part.
Okay, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, I have a speech impediment, a mental impediment. To come here and speak and try to help all you people out that don't have impediments or disabilities is it's an extreme effort for me, believe it or not. So please bear with me if I take a little more time finding the right words. I am homeless also. When I was a kid, I was extremely rich. 1 month later, I became extremely poor. Poorer than the poorest person in a Texas prison jail cell. That's how poor I was. In Mexico City at age 5 years old. There wasn't a blade of grass or a chow line or nothing to eat. And my father didn't have a job. He was a UT college graduate. He went to Korea. He wanted to be a bullfighter. My mom left him. He came up to try to get her, went back to Mexico, lost his job. We didn't have nothing. And he went out to the streets to try to sell a novel so we could eat something other than concrete. Okay. Now, everybody, you must understand that there was a time here in the the microphone in our great American country where it was called the Great Depression. There was half the population or more of American citizens, white, black, native, and the Hispanics that existed in America back then, didn't have nothing to eat. There was chow lines, soup kitchens. Many rich people in current day America went through these times. You turn around to look at people in Austin, so many people say you're worth nothing because you're homeless. When their grandfathers were homeless, even worse. Everybody is out for themselves with incredible greed. Not everybody, but a lot of people. They act like rats for their own cheese. Nobody is a rat. Nobody is a scum. Everybody has to take care of everybody. Jesus said, do unto another what you'd want another to do unto you. It's called the golden rule. Why is it called the golden rule? Because if you obey that rule, you will always have. You give and you receive. It's always reciprocal. When you hide your treasure or your wealth in some place and say, this is mine, I'm not giving to anybody, I want to have more. I have more than the other. That's the Joneses rule of see who has more. What happens is you create a bad competition. That bad competition, who has got more, creates wars. So what we have to do is try to be more Christian and less money. Worship God and not money. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Our last speaker. Sir, 3 minutes.
All right. This is the appropriate height. Hi, I'm Seneca. I am from District 4. I came to speak both in favor of passing this ordinance as well as many others before me towards the decriminalization of homelessness. I'm here representing DSA, but I'm also here because I spent a year in my 20s, actually late teens, being homeless after my mother had a mental illness and kicked me out. During that time, my single overriding fear every time I went to sleep was who is going to wake me up, and is the person who wakes me up going to have a knife or will they have a gun? And I was better off than a lot of other people. You know, I'm very clearly someone who speaks King's English. I have the skin color that I have. People are inclined to view me well. But overwhelmingly, we have a population that does not have my advantages, right? That we're not a teenager who everyone wants to give a chance to. And when those people are afraid of waking up, their fear is far more justified than mine was. We have a situation where we know that there is a gap in housing and that it's going to grow, right? The demand is getting larger and it's growing faster than the housing stock, and the stock that's being built is being catered towards people who can't live here right now. So it's hard, right? We have a structural problem, and we try to make the structural problem disappear so that the people who are moving here, who have access to power and privilege, are able to ignore the problem, right? But when we make people disappear, we can't connect them to services. When we make people's arrest records, right, a metric of police productivity, rather than the ability to connect people with services, we're actively incentivizing police officers to make the problem worse, to drive people further away from services and further towards communities where they're likely to be victimized, right? The homeless are not a source of crime, they're a source of victims. And the further we get them from police, right, the further we get them from services, the more we increase the likelihood that they're going to be victimized. I'm extremely careless. I walk around with valuables all the time. I have some minor brain damage that causes that. I've never been victimized while I've been relatively affluent. I've been robbed twice at knife point when I was homeless, when I had nothing. That's not a coincidence. That's a structural fact. People who have nothing are more easily victimized because they have a reason to run away from the police, and that reason is justified. I know that the council is already planning on a very large housing bond. I would incentivize you to make that as large as possible. I know that the state prevents us from using the overwhelming amount of revenue to do more about that, but do what you can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're now back up to the dais on this item number 30. Is there a motion, Mayor Pro Tem?
I'd like to move approval.
Mayor Pro Tem moves approval. Mr. Cassar seconds that. Is there any discussion? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I want to thank all of those of you who have come today to hear this item. Some of you have signed up in support and are just here to listen. Those of you who offered your testimony, I really appreciate you sharing your story, especially as it related to the ordinances. Thank you. I think you've given us a lot to think about as we move forward. But I want to just really thank all of the providers who worked so hard to develop this plan. This is really represents an unprecedented amount of collaboration and work together and forward thinkingness, if that's a word. And I think it will really stand our community in good stead. As the Ending Community Homelessness Organization announced earlier today, there is the point in time count from January showed a 5% increase in this city and this community in terms of individuals experiencing homelessness, and that is certainly not the direction that we want to be going as a city and as a region. So this plan should help us really understand well how to invest well across the system, how to continue those programs that we know to be effective, and really make sure that we as a community are increasing the level of resources for this. As I had an opportunity to say earlier in the press conference around the point in time count, ending homelessness in this community cannot just be an initiative of the city or the county. It is going to take each and every one of us in this city to commit to making that our goal. It is an achievable goal, and this plan really helps us know how to do it. And so I appreciate, again, all of the work and our staff's work in reviewing this. And again, we have some difficult challenges ahead of us and a real crisis. Nobody in the city should be sleeping on the streets or the alleys or in the creek beds of our city. And so I look forward to continuing to look during our budget cycle for ways to increase the resources that we're putting toward this effort.
Mr. Kassar.
I'd also like to really applaud all of the everybody that was involved in putting together this action plan. I like how bold it is in trying to achieve a really significant goal of functional zero in homelessness. I recently went to a meeting hosted by the police department up in the northern part of my district, near some of the neighborhoods in our city that experience disproportionate rates of violent crime, to talk about safety issues with constituents from all over that area. And people's number one issue was actually about addressing homelessness in order to reduce the victimization of people experiencing homelessness, understanding that people experiencing homelessness are indeed in a constant state of being worried about their own health and safety. And so I was really proud that not only this council listed housing and homelessness as one of our top strategic priorities, but that really is something that is a priority all across the city. And to be able to explain to those constituents that we had this sort of a plan, I think was really empowering, and I think the community is ready to take bold action along with us. And so my comments are just broadly about the plan in that respect, and think that really want to appreciate that work, and I'm excited to vote for it and pass it. But considering that we did have this testimony on the important issue related to the ordinances that on no sit, no lie camping and panhandling, I did want to ask the city manager one quick question, because now since the auditor has put out their report and has sort of put the ball in the staff's court, I just wanted to know whether or not you already had a date or a plan for when any of these would be brought back to us for reconsideration, or if you don't have that plan now, when you might be able to let the public know when the staff would post anything, or if the staff isn't posting particular ordinances for reconsideration or discussion, when it would be appropriate for it to eventually be in council members' court to address those issues.
Thanks, council member. We certainly are planning to give a memo back to mayor and council based on the executive session that we had regarding these ordinances in 2 weeks, and so you should expect that.
So at that point in 2 weeks, the public can know what things would be posted by staff and what issues, if any, would have to be posted by council members.
Correct.
Great. And in closing, I do think it's appropriate that those ordinances are listed as challenges in this plan. I certainly am of the mind that these ordinances, as they currently exist, are morally unjust for the reasons that were listed, and also don't help us reduce homelessness. And I don't think I can put it any more eloquently than what was stated here, but the criminalization of homelessness I don't think is helping us achieve the goals in the plan. But I also very much appreciate what is listed in the plan as actions, because if we give people shelter and care and the housing and services they've been denied, we can address the root causes of what cause homelessness. But that we shouldn't have to wait to do all of that to also do our part, in my view, which is to end that criminalization of homelessness before we functionally end homelessness and afterwards, because it isn't an APD decision or a municipal court decision, or it isn't anybody's decision but our own on this dais whether or not to have those ordinances, so ultimately it is up to us.
Do you want to join in those comments myself too? I want to thank the folks from the community who came and spoke to us, and it's obviously an issue we're going to be picking up here pretty directly. I want to thank the stakeholders, ECHO, and the other service providers for working on this plan for a long period of time, going through a lot of revisions in that. I just want to note that I really think that at this point in time, there's the critical mass of political and social will in the community to really deal with this, as evidenced by many different things, including the council's work in the strategic session, where this was listed as one of the highest priorities that we have in the community. I want to thank ECHO for being part of the group that was convened a year ago to try to pull together everyone to come up with a plan. And I look forward to us finding as many different funding sources as we can to try and meaningfully hit this. Anyone else want to speak on this before we move on? It's been moved and seconded. Those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed? It's unanimous on the dais with Councilmember Troxclair gone. Thank you all. Council, let's talk here about order just a little bit. A couple things. We have some folks here that I think potentially we're honoring with some of the road changes that are here now and can't be here later. So at the very least, we might want to be able to recognize and have them speak. There are 13 and 17 people signed up to speak on items 77 and 78, so I'm not sure we would call up those items because that's the last thing we would do.
There may be overlap.
Dinner. What? Sorry?
There may be overlap in those speakers too. So
could be.
Mm-hmm.
Could be. So we've talked about how to handle that. We also have Councilmember Alter here until the dinner break, so until 5:30, and then we're going to lose her till 9:30. And there's some items that she would like us to consider while she's here. The Planning Commission item, the committee item, the dockless item, and the Code Next petition item. For me, I would suggest, as much as I would like to see the committees getting done, given the agenda we have today and the number of amendments we have coming from the dais, that might be something. I apologize for not letting you work through this at work session on Tuesday when I wasn't here, but that might be a good thing to do, to take that item and bring it back, so we're not handling those amendments. But the Planning Commission, the dockless bike, and the Code Next petition might be something that we want to be able to handle. I don't know if we want to try to do some of those before 5:30, or we pick those up after 9:30. We might be able to have people to speak on them, but then hold off taking action until 9:30 when Councilmember Alter came back. But those are what we have. Does anyone want to speak to scheduling now? Ann?
Of course, I feel like it's important to move forward with 77 and 78. There may be some overlap in speakers, and maybe some speakers would not feel that they needed to speak the entire 3 minutes. But we do have folks here that cannot be here later, and I would like to get started on those. That would be my preference.
And then we also have another item, the Pat Crow's Memorial Plaza,
That's
which
right.
we're also trying to have handled before the break as well, so that the people could leave here and go to that reception. So we have those three things, and we have 45 minutes. Do we want to try and just barrel through those three things and then come back after the break and let the speakers speak to those issues?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, handle zoning and those things that we can, but that would mean that we're not going to be deliberating before. And then we have the consent agenda and planning commission. If we could get through the consent agenda, we could probably let a lot of people go home as well too. There's only one item on the housing issue that doesn't look to be controversial. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we have some things. We have a lot of speakers that are signed up for them. They're all in favor of these. So if we could move through them without people taking the full allotted 3 minutes, we could probably actually get through them and not have to wait till after dinner to finish. Does that work for everybody? And we're going to take the two roads. We're going to take we're going to take Pat Steele,
Okay.
and then if we can, consent zoning. Ms. Houston?
And I certainly appreciate that, Mayor, but we've got a consultant that's just kind of sitting here, and I don't know what kind of money clock is ticking and ticking and ticking and ticking.
And we have that too. All right, let's see how quickly we can move through these things. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So is it the council's will to move forward on the two road issues? Let's do that.